Do you know the terror of he who sleeps? To the very toes he is terrified, because the ground gives way under him and the dream begins. These are the words of Friedrich Nietzsche. But these words ring true to us as well who have ever experienced having a nightmare. Nightmares are universal to all of us. All of us at some point in time have experienced them. But far fewer of us have ever experienced the phenomenon known as night terrors. And a night terror is vastly different than a nightmare. In the 1920s, using EEG technology, brains were scanned during sleep. And it was discovered that as we sleep, we go through two forms of sleeping, REM sleep and NREM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. When we are dreaming, our eyes are darting about, possibly responding to the visual cues firing in our cortex as we dream. But when we are not dreaming, we go into non-REM periods of sleep where our eyes are stationary. There are no dreams. And our brains alternate in these two forms of sleep throughout the evening. Nightmares occur only during REM sleeping. Only during our dreaming periods are we visualizing nightmares. Nightmares are also very distinguishable because people suffering from a nightmare can be easily awoken, they can be easily aroused, and very often they can remember what those frightening dream experiences were like. I'm sure all of you listening and watching can remember times where you've had a frightening dream and spent time talking to friends and family about it the next day. Nightmares are also generally tied to life events, maybe times of high anxiety or stress, maybe times of difficult transition that you're trying to process in your sleep. Night terrors, on the other hand, are very different. Night terrors occur during NREM sleep, non-rapid eye movement sleep, generally in the third and fourth stages of our sleep cycle. Night terrors are very difficult to be woken from. Individuals experiencing night terrors are very, very difficult to arouse. And when they do finally wake from their night terror experience, very seldom ever remember anything from the experience. There's a very limited recall of night terror experiences. Unlike nightmares, which are universal to all people and consist throughout the lifespan, people suffering from night terrors generally have a genetic link. Night terrors, generally speaking, are passed down in families genetically. Night terrors typically are outgrown by the age of 10, but not all people outgrow night terrors. Many individuals experience night terrors on into adulthood. However, if a person does not outgrow night terrors by the age of 10, generally speaking, they not only persist into adulthood, they become far more frequent, they become far more intense, and they are also indicators of other deeper psychological and emotional problems. Individuals suffering from night terrors in adulthood, generally speaking, score very highly on other psychotic scales. They usually suffer from depression and other personality disorders. They usually have dissociative issues, and some of them even score on certain dimensions of the schizophrenic scale. Much research has been done, speaking of adults suffering from night terrors and similar sleep disturbances. Night terrors and sleepwalking, for instance, they occur on the same continuum of sleep behavior, and they have very similar effects on the body and on the brain physiologically. But not as much research has been done on children suffering night terrors until recently. In one 2005 study, it was learned that children who suffer from night terrors also have a high correlation to other emotional issues. Children who are diagnosed as having night terrors also score on some dimensions of the schizophrenic scale. This research is considered controversial by some. Generally speaking, night terrors in children is overlooked. It's seen as a genetic passage into adulthood, which is why it fades off by age 10. However, if we look at children who have night terrors, we can correlate them to certain behavioral problems that they have in their non-sleeping hours. For instance, children who are suffering from night terrors tend to have peer issues. They tend to have problems with being hyperactive. They tend to have very falling social behavior. Sometimes they have a difficult time understanding social boundaries. There's a high level of conflict and anxiety that's connected to sleep terror and other dream and sleep disturbances such as somnambulism. And this is one of the key interesting facets about night terrors. We can correlate specific sleep disorders to specific non-sleeping peer issues. It has also been discovered that those who suffer from sleep and night terrors tend to be very creative individuals. We tend to see that people who suffer from night terrors are very artistic, they're very expressive, they have that artistic introversion. But, as I have also stated, such individuals also do score on the schizophrenic scale certain dimensions and certain key features. Perhaps it's the disassociation that comes with creativity, but there is a definite correlation between emotional and psychological problems, creativity, and night terrors. The genuine problem is that so little research has actually been done to establish what those correlates really are and how to detect the difference. Because the question is, when does it stop being creative expression and become a dangerous road sign to future psychological problems? Where does the line exist between creativity and schizophrenia? Between art and madness? Between expression and a desperate cry for help? We don't know. Very little research has been done to explore this. You'll see behind me a series of pictures. These were all done by an individual suffering from schizophrenia. Each of these were actually done by the same person throughout the span of their schizophrenic episodes. Now, what we see here in the beginning is a very cartoonish, bright-eyed, adorable image of a cat. The same cat was brought in for the person to sketch here, and it becomes a bit more fragmented, a bit more artsy, a bit more eccentric looking. But then we see down here, and into here, finally, this level of madness that's being expressed, where you have this cat looking like it's just some fiery demon. Where is the line? Where is the line when it stops being art and becomes madness? I purport that there is a tremendous gap in our knowledge base on the subject, on the correlates of night terrors and other sleep disturbances, creativity, and schizophrenia. Research has shown that they are all correlated, that there is a significant correlation of all three of these dimensions, but no one knows why, and no one knows quite where the line is. And I believe that if we could find that line, we would all sleep a bit better. Thank you.